All right, so welcome to lesson 4.9. So 4.9, we're actually modeling how to figure out which one of the 5 common ions is causing our patient's symptoms. Right, so far in this unit, we've talked about what ions are. So they're basically salts or electrolytes that can give us certain symptoms like cramps if we have too little of these ions, or bloating if we have too much of these ions, along with other symptoms, right? And then we talked about the periodic table for a little bit. So we're going to put those two things together and some of our previous Nearpod lessons in order to identify for your particular patients which one of these 5 ions is causing them specific types of symptoms. And we're going to go through 3 different parts to determine that. So in this first video, we're just going to go through part 1, analyzing the patient's symptoms. So scrolling down to my example of part 1, notice that in this table here are the doctor's notes with the patient's symptoms. So as you read this to yourself, I highly recommend you list out the symptoms below. So for example, patient shows signs of low blood pressure and irregular heartbeat. So you want to note that for yourself, as well as signs of confusion, so on and so forth. Right? So these are all the symptoms that I picked up from reading the doctor's notes. So after I have identified all of these symptoms, I'm going to go to step 2, compare the patient's symptoms to the biological ions chart. So if I click on them, it will look like this table here. And recall that we did this in Nearpod lesson 4.2. So if you don't remember how to do this or how to use this table, please watch this Nearpod lesson video linked in step 4 in blue. Right. So basically what I'm doing is I'm looking for the same symptoms as the ones listed in the doctor's notes. So low blood pressure, irregular heartbeat, confusion, and slow breathing. So as I scroll through, I'm looking for irregular heartbeat, low blood pressure, and confusion, and maybe along with some other symptoms, right? So for this one, K, or potassium, I notice irregular heartbeat, so that's one of the symptoms. Let's see if there's any ones that are better. All right, so reading through this one, there's high blood pressure, no low blood pressure or irregular heartbeat. But if I look here, I see that there's irregular heartbeat, low blood pressure, confusion, slow breathing, and these are very similar to these 4 symptoms that I've listed here. Right, so maybe my guess is that for this patient, they might have a high concentration or too much of Mg, magnesium. So then you would respond in the green box. So I wrote out the patient might have too much magnesium ions, or Mg2+, because the patient shows symptoms of, just going to copy and paste this. Right, these 4 things. Right, that's my particular guess. So know that in part 1, you can guess one specific ion, or you can guess a couple. I just want to see what you think the patient has too much or too little of, right? we might not have an exact answer just yet because this is just part 1, right? And eventually, when we get to part 2 and 3, hopefully we'll narrow that down, right? So hopefully this helps you out with completing part 1. If you get stuck on part 2 and 3, feel free to watch the other videos.